Hello and welcome to episode 542 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, and we are here for the second Market Monday of the 2023 fantasy football season. For this episode, I am joined by our King Virgin, Director of Analytics himself, Michael Leone. Mike, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. Excited to be back talking some fantasy football.
Really is a great thing. Quick reminder here, each Monday, I go over the biggest risers and fallers in ADP, average draft position, from the previous 7 days and discuss whether I'm buying or selling these players at their new prices. Wanted to have Leone on for this one because we have just finished our first run of rankings for the 2023 season. You can find all the applicable best ball rankings up in the menu right now. And there will be some controversy, some debate, some things we need to talk through. We're not going to do all of that today, but on some of these ADP movers, we will. Before we get into it, reminder that if you are the type of person listening to this, a fantasy football market update podcast right now, you should be putting your knowledge to work at Underdog Fantasy. Promo code ETR will get you up to $100 in free entries. They have massive best ball contests up already. And quite frankly, like in the Superflex thing that's up right now, the ADP is wild and shifting all over the place. Will be some massive movement throughout the spring and summer. Also on Underdog, the Albatross Majors Only Golf Best Ball looks like it's going to overlay. Well, I think it has a pretty good chance to overlay, around half full right now. Locks on Thursday. We do have rankings up right now on the site for the Underdog Golf Albatross. It's a bit complicated because you're kind of projecting how many majors guys are going to play and how they will perform in those majors. But yeah, super interesting format and fun. Anyways, begin with the risers from the last 7 days. First guy I want to talk about is Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is up 4.2 spots to 22.3 overall in FFPC. Every day that Kareem Hunt, who remains a free agent, and we're doing this Monday around noon, every day that Kareem Hunt does not re-sign with the Browns, Nick Chubb looks better and better. And honestly, like, unless Nick Chubb comes crawling back on unless Kareem Hunt comes crawling back on some bargain basement deal, I don't really think it's too likely that Kareem Hunt is back with the Browns. I'd also note that Dearness Johnson left the Browns, 1-year deal with the Jaguars. So we're talking about Jerome Ford and John Kelly as Nick Chubb backups. Now, we also know, Leone, that Nick Chubb was one of the most efficient running backs in the history of the NFL, at least 5.0 yards per carry in all 5 of his NFL seasons. Really good touchdown rate always, 48 rushing touchdowns on 1,210 NFL carries. And my thing for this year, Leone, like the Eagles last year a little bit, elite offensive line, mobile quarterback, improving weapons. You could see the Browns take a leap forward this year, and we're getting a usage bump for Nick Chubb. So I'm kind of on board with this ADP move up for Nick Chubb. What do you think about it? I know that the model, the spreadsheet versions have had a hell of a time with Nick Chubb over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Chubb's been really difficult to project given the just absurd efficiency that he posts. It's just so out of line with the average running back. But I'm with you. I'm into Nick Chubb this season. I think that the possibility that this offense is really, really good, combined with the fact that we might not have Kareem Hunt. We also saw Chubb get over 20 carries and up to like some higher carry numbers than we've seen in the past last year. That you put that all together, and you also look at, we just haven't had any of these like crazy legendary running back seasons anyways, where I think he can get to where you need him to get, even though his pass catching isn't always where we want it to be.
I mean, on Underdog, half PPR is so no bonuses. Half PPR, no bonuses. It's so touchdown heavy. And like Nick Chubb's lack of receiving role, he only had 27 catches last year on 37 targets, despite playing 14 games. I mean, it doesn't hurt you that bad in that. I'm sorry, he played 17 games last year. It does not hurt you that bad in half PPR, no bonuses. So yeah, in on the Nick Chubb move up. Second riser I want to talk about was Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is up 33.7 spots into the 16th round on FFPC. Meanwhile, Trey Lance is down 17 spots into the 12th round. So Evan and I talked about this a bunch last week. It's just, I don't think anyone really knows. I think I agree with what Kyle Shanahan said. Whether he should have said it or not, I don't know, but I agree with what he said. How can you not say Brock Purdy? It's Brock Purdy's job to lose, given what the team did when Brock Purdy started 8 games. I mean, I know he wasn't like setting the world on fire, but he was pretty impressive from a team level perspective, considering how little he got to play with the team. The problem is he's coming off elbow surgery now. No one knows exactly how that's going to look. Trey Lance, I feel like, and Evan talked about last week, and I agree with him, the 49ers have soured on him to some degree. We have no idea if Trey Lance is even good at football. So I don't know, man. We know there's value here in this scheme with this yak ability in the pass catchers. What do you think about the Purdy move up 33 spots?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense a little bit to move him up. He's going so late in terms of positionally. He's going still like, around QB 30 or so. And I think at that point, given the fact that when he's healthy, he's the leader in the clubhouse for a team that's going to be pretty efficient, has so many playmakers, that it makes sense. I'm a little tentative to chase him too much further up the board just because there's so many red flags with the health. It's an injury that can take up to a year to heal post surgery. And I don't know what I'm talking about injury wise, but nobody out there really does. And there's just a lot of uncertainty. It just seems like he's a dog to be ready for the start of the season. And then whoever it is that starts day one, if it's Lance, if that person plays really well, it just makes it that much harder for Purdy, even when he does get back healthy, when we don't know when that's going to be to be the clear-cut starter.
I mean, when you blow out your UCL, there's not a huge track record of big sample size here of guys coming back and what the timetable is going to be. I think, right now I would call Brock Purdy like 50-50 to be ready for the start of the season, most likely. My thing is, let's say we knew Brock Purdy was starting 17 games for sure. What round do you think he would go in then? Or what quarterback do you think he would be in then? He might be quarterback 20 still or something like that? Or do you think he'd be better than that?
No, I was going to say quarterback 20. I mean, there might be a little bit more upside there, but it's not like you're chasing a league-winning season. And I think that's why Lance's ADP is a little bit further ahead. I'd probably put Lance's odds of starting week one slightly ahead of Purdy's, but we know that per game upside, just due to the rushing element for Lance, is a lot higher than it is for Purdy, unless Purdy just turns out to be, as truly efficient as he was last year. But it just seems hard to think that's the case.
Yeah. I mean, I think for now, I don't think that you're missing much by just being like, I don't know what to do with this situation and not taking Lance at his ADP and not taking Brock as his ADP moves up also. Last riser I wanted to talk about was Tony Pollard, up 2.4 spots to 21.9 overall. So, Tony Pollard, I was surprised when we got done with our first run of projections / rankings that we weren't higher on Tony Pollard. His backups are Ronald Jones, Malik Davis, Rico Dowdle. Now, from the projection side, Leone, I believe we're baking in them adding someone. And they've been linked to Bijan. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they've learned their lesson on Zeke, but that doesn't mean they won't add some running back in the draft to play behind Tony Pollard. I just think, man, dude is so outrageously efficient. Cowboys are going to be run-centric and defensive-centric this year. Offensive line will be very good. Maybe not elite like it's been in the past, but very good. And the big thing to me is the goal line stuff. Ezekiel Elliott got 16 attempts from inside the 5-yard line last year. That was third most in the league. Only Jamal Williams and Jalen Hurts got more. Zeke scored 9 rushing touchdowns from inside the 5-yard line. Say there's like a 50 or 60% chance Pollard gets that stuff. He is an absolute smash. So I'm actually surprised that we didn't come out with Pollard a little bit higher. What do you think about Pollard in the wake of Zeke?
It might be a case where we're a little bit too conservative on the projection in terms of them adding another back here. So we'll see what they do and continue to adjust. I do think the high end upside is there. I'm a little bit worried about the offense as a whole without Kellen Moore and just some of the comments that Mike McCarthy has made. I mean, you would think run heavier would be better for the running back in fantasy, but generally you just want the offense, going full bore like they were last year in terms of number of plays per game. If they're throwing more, they're probably more efficient. It creates more high value touches. So just a touch of concern there. Right now we've got him RB10 right around there, a little bit higher, I think, than half PPR. So I think that's about right, but I could definitely see the case for taking him, ahead of the guy we just talked about, and Nick Chubb, ahead of Breece Hall. If you're concerned about the injury, that's sort of the territory where you're looking at Pollard.
Yeah, and to be clear, we'll talk more about the Kellen Moore stuff as the season gets closer. Kellen Moore had them running very fast and very efficiently. They were in top 4 situation neutral pace, as Thorman tweeted yesterday. Each of the last 4 years, they were top 6 in the league in plays per game each of the last 4 years. We'll see what Brian Schottenheimer does, but Brian Schottenheimer has a history of not playing fast at all. That was with Seattle. We'll see if that was related to Pete Carroll and all the nonsense that goes on up there with them playing old school football. But yeah, I definitely a downgrade from Kellen Moore to Schottenheimer there. All right, let's get to the fallers. Devonte Adams down 2.5 spots to 16.3 overall. I don't know, man. Like, I thought Devonte Adams was really good last year. I get that he'll turn 31 in December. He set a career high last year, even at age 30, in yards per catch at 15.2. He was PFF's number 2 graded wide receiver behind only Tyreek Hill. Justin Jefferson was 3rd. Devonte Adams was 6th in yards per route run last year. Now they lose Darren Waller. They lose Mac Hollins. They add Jacoby Myers. They add Austin Hooper. They still have Renfro. I'd call it like a wash in terms of target competition, probably. I don't know why people don't want to click Devonte Adams. And we had this last year. We were ahead of market on Devonte Adams pretty significantly. I know Leone was super high on Devonte Adams last year. I don't know why people don't like clicking Devonte Adams. Now he's falling again, Leone.
Yeah, I don't get it at all. I think last year there were at least more question marks, with the shift off of Aaron Rodgers. There's so much unknown. But then he enters a situation where you mentioned the career high in yards per catch. He did that with a career high in targets too. He had 180 targets over the course of the season. He's also a player that, just due to his skill set, even though touchdowns are a little bit higher variance, like Devonte Adams is used specifically around the goal line. And I guess people are scared again about a QB change here with Jimmy G instead of Carr. But yeah, I mean, Jimmy G, for as much heat as he takes, historically, he has been a pretty efficient quarterback overall. I don't have question marks about, if you're concerned about quarterback, you're just concerned about like a huge drop off. I don't think we're going to see a cliff drop off at quarterback. Right. Maybe we see a small downgrade. So I think he's an absolute smash right now. I think he's one of the best values in the first 2 rounds of drafts right now. I think it's just absolutely insane that the market, for whatever reason, is like so much more confident in Stephon Diggs than Devonte Adams.
Yeah, I think it's the quarterback play, and like the overall offense. And I do think that Derek Carr is better for Devonte Adams than Jimmy Garoppolo is, but like Leone said, not by a lot, not by a cliff, And so, yeah, I certainly still like taking Devonte Adams there. One that I think the market is starting to catch up on, I've tweeted about it. I've seen other people tweet about it, and I think that affects somewhat, is Dalvin Cook down 6.0 spots to 47th overall on FFPC. He was going even later in the big board on Underdog. Dalvin Cook has a $14.1 million cap hit in 2023, and he turns 28 in August, and he was not that good last year. PFF's number 50 running back out of 60 qualifiers. Dalvin Cook also has a long history of injuries, including a shoulder surgery this offseason. On top of all that, Alexander Mattison gets a 2-year deal with $6.5 million guaranteed. Not a ton, but for a running back in today's NFL, that's like borderline starters money. So yeah, in the limited drafts that I've done so far, I have not taken Dalvin Cook at all, and I smash Alexander Mattison every time. Madison's big board ADP got up to 119th overall in Underdog. It was rising, but I still thought that was too cheap for a guy who could be literally the starting running back for the Vikings if Dalvin Cook ends up cut. And I think there's a pretty reasonable chance of that. And so you get into a lot of spots when you're drafting this early in best ball about trying to project just who's going to be on what teams, right? And I think there's some edge to be had there. Leone, any thoughts on handling Dalvin and Madison right now?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't quite understand it, that the market seems to be so optimistic on Dalvin Cook, but so pessimistic on Joe Mixon in somewhat similar situations. And we kind of, I guess there's the off the field question marks with Mixon as if that's going to affect some play. So I guess from that standpoint, I get it. But from a cut risk standpoint, in terms of contract stuff, it seems like our whole Slack, including Silva, thinks Dalvin's a big cut risk. And if you're going to have a guy that's a cut risk like that, you mentioned some of the red flags that were just beyond that in terms of age and the production last year. Just, it doesn't seem like a worthwhile bet to make with the information we have right now.
Yeah. I mean, God, Madison is going to, even if Dalvin somehow comes back on some renegotiation or whatever, Madison's going to play more. You don't give a guy $6.5 million guaranteed and not play him more like they did with Madison. Last faller to touch on here today is DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is down 6.8 spots to 59.6 overall. So I don't know, man. I was very frustrated with DeAndre Swift last season, mainly because my thesis was right. Lions are going to be good. Lions are going to be efficient. Lions are going to score a ton of touchdowns on offense. They're going to be horrible on defense. They're going to set up a ton of shootouts. It's perfect for DeAndre Swift. I was taking him in the second round, early second round of full PPR every single time. We get to the season, and they play it behind Craig Reynolds. They play it behind Jamal Williams. I think at some point, very early on, they just decided they didn't like what DeAndre Swift gives them. And what they're telling us this year is like, okay, Jamal Williams walks, cool. Then they give 3 years, $18 million to David Montgomery, who to me is a clear upgrade on Jamal Williams. Then they bring back Craig Reynolds. Meanwhile, DeAndre Swift is on his rookie deal. He's likely gone. So it's hard for me to project a bigger role this year than DeAndre Swift had last year. And that role last year was 7.1 carries and 5.0 targets per game, which honestly is fine. And like, he's so explosive. You can get a fantasy floor and ceiling combo with that. But to me, at 50 in the 50s overall, you're expecting a bump in usage. I'm not sure that's in the cards. I know you're more in on DeAndre Swift here, Leone, so I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a little higher on Swift in the market. I do think we'll see him drop, into the 60s. And I think when you start getting into that section of the draft, you're okay with the week-to-week volatility, which you mentioned, like the overall workload is probably not going to be high. If it is what it was the end of last year, you're going to have a lot of like 5-point games. But Miles Sanders got drafted in that range last year. He had a lot of those low games, and he was still a real big league winner for people because of the spike weeks. And Swift was winning people, DFS tournaments at times down the stretch, even with that reduced role, because the high value touches are there. It's a team that's going to put up points. He's going to be used a ton in the passing game. So the way I look at it is, as bad as it sounds to be like, okay, 4 to 5 catches a game and like 6 to 7 carries, it sounds so measly, but if he can provide spike weeks with that, then you just sort of free roll a little bit of the upside, like just the chaos of a season. Like what happens if Montgomery gets hurt? What happens if he just is so good, and we know he's a talented player, that they do end up utilizing him more over the course of the season? So I think the sentiment and the narratives against him right now, and I get why, but it's still a bet on talent, bet on high value touches type of play for me when you start getting into especially the 6th round. It's the type of dead zone running back that I like to target.
It's easier for me to swallow in best ball where I don't have to pick when I have to start him in redraft, because like, man, it can be really frustrating to have to pick to start him in redraft. And I will say, like the bull case to me for Swift is that it can run out different than it did last year. I would note that running backs coach of the Lions last year, Deuce Staley, is now gone. Scotty Montgomery comes over from the Colts to fill that role. We don't know if maybe Staley didn't like DeAndre Swift. Also, Dave Montgomery can get hurt, certainly. And like Leone said, Swift can simply play his way into a bigger role. So I'm not writing it off. I just think people expecting Swift to have some type of Austin Eckler role, or, one of these really good pass catching and half of the rushing work role. I don't think that's likely for Swift.
Yeah. I was talking to Ben Gretsch about it though, and the comp to Eckler was more. Now, I think the holdout Melvin Gordon had affected this a little bit more, but it's kind of a comp to Eckler when Melvin Gordon was there is sort of where we're at with Swift. And Eckler did eventually kind of like break out in that context. Again, the holdout made it a little bit easier for Eckler, but I can still see where that comp that Gretsch delivered makes sense, and we still get that upside from Swift.
All right. We will continue to talk about and debate all these topics as we continue to shape and finalize our rankings. That is going to do it for the second Market Monday of the season. Thanks so much to everyone who's checking these out. Let us know if there's anything else you want to see on this Market Monday stuff. We'll be back Wednesday night with Silva and Amico to talk NFL draft props. Be sure you're subscribed on YouTube. It's free. Be sure to subscribe to anywhere podcasts are found. It is free, so you don't miss that. For the King, Producer Jackson, for Leone, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.